Do you know where I might obtain a fresh horse? Mine's almost exhausted, I'm afraid.
I don't know this time of the night.
Well, I'll pay. And pay well.
Well, I've got a horse.
Is he a good traveler?
He'll go as far and as fast as any horse in Kentucky.
Then I'll make a bargain with you, friend. My horse for yours and all of this gold to boot.
You just made yourself a deal.
Now, if you'll be good enough to change my saddle and gear, I'll warm myself at your fire.
Help yourself, and it'll be a pleasure.
Thank you.
Prettiest girl in all of New Orleans.
And about the dowdiest. I don't think Salem stars are up to big city standards.
You sure look good to me.
Speaking of looks, you're quite a distinguished figure yourself.
Well, I feel all hemmed in, and I also feel just a little naked.
Naked?
You wouldn't let me bring old Ticklicker along.
Mr. Boone, will you please remember that this is a pleasure trip and not a hunting expedition?
I don't have to remember because you're not going to let me forget.
I'm ready anytime you are. Now watch your step, man.
Goodbye, Daniel. Behave yourself.
I'd better.
See you in a month or so, Gabe.
Yeah, barring floods, hurricanes, and blizzards, that might be so.
Married, I promised you a honeymoon. Of course, it's a little late.
A little late?
At least you can't say I've gone back on a promise.
No. There's lots of other things I could say.
Like what?
Like, it's been the most wonderful years a woman ever spent.
Even without a honeymoon?
I don't really think I've ever had time to miss it.
Becky, you've had a pretty hard life.
A hard life. Building a home and raising a family. Oh, Dan, what else is there in life?
Pretty clothes, fancy parties, people to wait on you hand and foot.
Piffle, I don't give a hoot about things like that.
You don't?
No.
Well, let me tell you, whether you care for them or not, that's what you're going to get when we get to New Orleans.
You know, If you try real hard, I might get to like it. Then where would you be?
I'm looking for another wife.
You wouldn't dare.
Step right in, sir, and refresh yourself. You look as though you need it. I'll have a boy take care
I
of
have
your
no
horse.
time for that now. I'm looking for a man named Daniel Boone. I believe he's staying with you.
You just missed him. He and his wife took the southbound coach this morning.
You know where the coach is stopping for the night?
Bent's Crossing.
Bent's Crossing.
It's a long ride, friend, and if I may say so, neither you nor your horse seem up to it.
Well, I thank you for your consideration. We'll make it.
Gentlemen, and refresh yourselves. I'll have a boy.
Have you seen a horseman pass by here within the hour?
That I did, but not within the hour. I'd make it closer to a half or less. Seemed in a hurry, he did.
Which way did he go?
Southward toward Bent's Crossing, trying to catch up with Daniel Boone.
Thank you. Just a little late getting started.
Got any mail for me from Salem?
No, but I got you a couple of passengers, and they're going with me all the way to New Orleans. Mr. and Mrs. Boone.
Did you say Boone? Not Daniel Boone by any chance?
I don't know how much chance has got to do with it, but I'm him.
Well, my name is Lomas. It's a great honor to meet you, Mr. Daniel Boone. And you too, ma'am.
Oh, well, thank you.
Now, you folks just go in and out of the night chill. I'll take care of your luggage.
Oh, just the small bag inside, please. That's all we'll need.
Yes, ma'am.
Friendly fella, isn't it?
Oh, that sort of friendliness can be dangerous. I think he broke my hand.
Supper will be ready pretty soon. I guess you folks would like to freshen up. I'll show you your room. It don't look very fancy, but I'm sure you'll find it comfortable.
I'm sure we will.
If you want anything, you let me know. I'll call you when the table's set.
Thank you. Oh, all I want is a good night's sleep.
Are you tired?
Aren't you?
No. But given a choice, I'd rather walk than ride in that coach. But not in these boots.
Good evening, sir, and a hearty welcome. I can offer you both food and drink.
Later, perhaps, landlord. Right now, I must speak to a certain Daniel Boone. I understand he's lodging here.
Right you are, sir. He arrived not more than a half hour ago.
Will you be good enough to call him for me, please? I must speak to him on a matter most urgent.
Yes, sir. I'm very sorry to disturb you, Mr. Boone, but there's a gentleman in the dining room. He says it's very urgent that he speaks to you right away.
Did he leave his name?
No, sir, and I forgot to ask him.
Tell him I'll be right there.
Yes, sir. Mr. Boone! It's the man to see you, Mr. Boone. Someone must have shot him through that window there.
Do what you can for him.
Yes, sir.
There were two of them, Mr. Boone. I was just coming from the stable when I heard the shots.
Well, it doesn't matter. They got away.
He's hurt real bad, Mr. Boone.
Captain.
Captain
Grant.
Daniel, old friend.
Give me some hot water and some...
No time for that, Daniel. I must speak to you alone. Inside pocket of my coat. Daniel, it is vitally important that you deliver that document to New Orleans.
All right, Captain.
The man that document is intended for will contact you.
How will I know him?
By a code phrase. He will say these exact words to you, Daniel. You are Mr. Daniel Boone of Boonesboro, Owsley County, Kentucky. Those exact words, Daniel.
I'll remember.
Then Godspeed, old friend. Daniel, guard the document well, for they will surely try to kill you for it. Just as they have killed.
From the office of the President of the United States.
Your friend won't need this anymore. I thought you might in case you're unarmed.
When does the next northbound coach come through?
2 days from now.
My wife is still sleeping. Will you give this to her when she wakes up? I'd appreciate it if you look after her and make sure she's on that coach to Salem. And Mr. Loomis, don't talk to anyone about what happened here this evening.
You can trust me, Mr. Boone.
I'll be on my way. It's urgent that I get to New Orleans.
Without rest?
I'll be all right.
I saddled your fresh horse, Mr. Boone. That one your friend was riding was about done in.
I'm obliged to you. How much do I owe you for him?
You don't owe me anything, Mr. Boone. You can return him on your way home.
And I'm doubly obliged to you.
Good luck on your journey.
Thank you.
Mrs. Boone.
Oh, Mr. Loomis, where's Mr. Boone?
Well, it's like this, ma'am. Mr. Boone had to leave.
Had to leave?
Yes, ma'am. He said to give you this.
Thank you.
Dear Becky, I don't like leaving you alone, but I have to get to New Orleans in a hurry. I can't tell you any more except I couldn't take you with me. I've left money and instructions with Mr. Loomis to see that you get safely back to Salem. Wait for me there. Love, Dan.
I simply don't understand this. It's not like Dan to just up and leave without some explanation.
Well, all I know, a man rode in asking for your husband and gave him some sort of a message.
A man? What man, and where is he now?
Captain Grant. He's gone now. Could I get you something, ma'am? A hot drink, perhaps?
No, thank you.
The coach for Salem don't leave for 2 days. I reckon you're going to have to stay on here till then, ma'am.
Nonsense. I'm not going back to Salem. I started for New Orleans, and that's where I'm going.
Well, Mr. Boone said...
I'm sure my husband did what he thought was best, but I don't happen to agree with him. By the way, did he say where he'd be staying in New Orleans?
I didn't mean to listen in, ma'am, but I think I heard the other gentleman mention the Hotel Imperial.
Hotel Imperial. Thank you. You will see that I'm awakened in time to catch the coach in the morning.
Yes, ma'am.
For my part, I'm glad it's done. I find I have no taste or talent for assassination.
What makes you think it's done?
I have never missed a stationary target at 15 paces, even if the light was bad.
Nor have I.
You saw the man fall. Why have any doubt?
Because I think Boone was the intended messenger, and Grant might have lived just long enough to pass along that dispatch.
Are you suggesting that we kill Boone, too?
From what I hear about the man, it may be necessary. He has a reputation as a man of great integrity, and Lord Brisbane's orders were to intercept that message at all costs.
And where will we find Boone?
I fancy he'll be on that coach tomorrow. It's quite possible we may have to kill the driver, too.
How can you sit there and talk about murder as though it were a game?
I dislike that word, murder.
What else would you call it?
A matter of political necessity.
Yes.
Take my advice and get some rest. We may have a busy day tomorrow.
Driver, is something wrong?
Tree across the road. I may have to unhitch to haul it clear.
Sorry to inconvenience you, friend, but we had to find a way to stop the coach.
Well, now that you've stopped it, what do you intend to do about it?
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Tyler, High Sheriff of Suffolk County. We have information you have a criminal aboard.
Well, I don't know what your source of information is, but I suggest you get another. The only passenger I have is a female, and she's not a criminal. She's a very respectable woman, married to a very respectable man by the name of Daniel Boone. Now, if you two would give me a hand with this tree, I may make it to New Orleans before snowfall.
We'd be happy to.
I assume that Mrs. Boone will be going through to New Orleans?
Yep.
Then, perhaps she'd like some company. Frankly, I'm getting tired of sitting in that saddle. I suggest we carry on by coach.
I have no objections. I'm as tired of straddling that horse as you.
Well, then it's decided. Get the horse's stone. I'll pay my respects to the lady. Mrs. Boone?
Yes?
Would you object greatly if two saddle-weary gentlemen shared the comfort of your coach?
Well, it's hardly my coach. And I assure you I have no objections. It's rather boring traveling alone.
It's rather a long journey for a lady to undertake all by herself.
Well, I didn't really undertake it by myself. A pressing business matter forced my husband to ride on ahead. I'm meeting him in New Orleans.
If you'll excuse me, ma'am, I'll make sure my horse is tied to lead.
I thought time was important to us. If we ride this coach, it'll set us back a day at least.
And save us more than that in New Orleans. How would you find a man you've never even seen in a crowded city? Mrs. Boone should serve our purpose very well. May I help you with your luggage, Mrs. Boone?
Oh, would you mind waiting a moment, Mr. Tyler, till I see if my husband's here? It's possible he couldn't get accommodations.
Are you just staying here, or are you going on to the coach stop?
We'll be going on, driver, just as soon as we made sure that Mrs. Boone has found her husband.
If he's here, she won't have much trouble finding him.
And what do you mean by that?
Why, his size. He's the only man I ever knew that was big enough to hunt bear with a willow switch. Why, down in Kentucky country, they tell a story about him. Seems he came into a tavern one day riding a moose and carrying a wildcat under each arm, using a rattlesnake for a whip.
If you don't mind, sir, I'll listen to your story later. Right now, I think I'll see that Mrs. Boone is all right.
Now, actually, I never believed that story. I mean, I never heard of no rattlesnakes in that country. I always figured that whip had to be a copperhead or a cottonmouth moccasin.
You'll excuse me for a moment?
But don't take too long.
Madam, I'm sorry, but we have no Mr. Boone registered at this hotel.
But I was told this is where he'd be staying.
Madam, I repeat, I'm sorry.
Perhaps he's made some sort of inquiry or left a message.
How would I know that, madam? This is the finest hotel in New Orleans. We have so many people come through here. How could I remember?
If my husband had been here, you'd remember.
Why do you say that?
Well, I guess the best way I can describe him is that he sort of looms over people.
Looms?
Yes, I think that's the proper word.
You mean he's rather tall?
I imagine you could describe him that way.
Well, we do have one guest here who rather answers the description, Mr. Holt, Mr. Nathan Holt. Oh, he's just coming down the staircase now.
Dan!
Madam, please.
Daniel Boone!
Madam, please. That man is Mr. Nathan Holt, and I'd appreciate it if you...
Nathan Holt? That's Daniel Boone. Don't you think I know my own husband when I see him?
Madam, if you insist on creating a scene, I shall be forced to call the manager.
I hardly think that will be necessary. Are you sure that was your husband, Mrs. Boone?
Certainly, I'm sure.
I repeat, madam, that man is registered as Nathan Holt.
What's his room number?
Suite C.
Thank you. Mr. Tyler, would you be kind enough to look after my luggage? I think Mr. Boone and I are due for a little conversation.
I'll see that it's taken care of.
Thank you. Dan?
Just about the last person I expected to see here.
Now, don't tell me that. You saw me in that lobby not 5 minutes ago and refused to recognize me.
Seeing you did surprise me some. I thought maybe you were all the way back to Salem by now.
I'm sure you did. Well? Are you going to tell me what this is all about, or do I have to pry it out of you?
To tell you the truth, you know as much about this as I do. All I know is I wish you hadn't have come.
Well, that's a fine thing to say. I thought this was to be our honeymoon.
Well, I thought so, too, until Captain Grant caught up with me at the Copper Kettle Inn.
What did he want?
He gave me a message to deliver.
What sort of message?
I don't know that either, except that it's from the President of the United States.
Who were you to deliver it to?
Well, I'm still waiting to find out. Becky, won't you please go back home and let me work this out, whatever way it has to go?
You're in trouble, Dan, aren't you? And in danger, too.
Well, that may be possible. One man's been killed already, Captain Grant. That's why you can't stay.
I haven't the slightest intention of leaving, not till you leave with me.
Don't you see, I can't let you stay. Your life may be in jeopardy, too.
Well, it won't be the first time I've been in danger, and I have my very serious doubts if it'll be the last time. So whether it's Mrs. Daniel Boone or Mrs. Nathan Holt, I'm staying right here.
Well, about all I can hope for is to get this business over with as soon as possible. And in the meantime, we can try to have as much fun as we can.
Would you see to it that Mr. Holt gets this as soon as possible?
I'll see to it myself, sir. Do you expect an answer, sir?
Not right away.
Do you like it, Dan?
Well, I gotta admit it's different from those gowns we looked at back in Salem.
Well, that's not the most complimentary remark I've ever heard.
Well, I never was real good at making pretty speeches.
I've noticed that from time to time.
But I always was real good at knowing a pretty girl when I saw one. I was even lucky enough to marry one.
Oh, I'd almost call that a pretty speech.
Mr. Holt? A gentleman just gave this to me for delivery. He said it was quite urgent, but that he expected no immediate reply.
Did the gentleman happen to leave his name?
No, sir, he didn't.
Well, thank you anyway.
You're welcome, sir. Good night.
Mr. Daniel Boone, if you will come to Pier 13 at 9 o'clock, I think your mission in New Orleans can be successfully completed.
Looks like that party we were planning may come off a little late.
You're going?
I don't have much choice.
One man's already been killed. This could be a trick.
Well, that's a chance looks like I'm gonna have to take.
I'll give you 2 hours. And if you're not back here by then, I'm gonna come looking for you.
Becky, no. You stay here and keep the door closed. And you hang on to this.
No, you may need it.
Well, you may need it more than I do. And I want to make sure that you're here when I come back. Good night, Becky.
I must say, Mr. Boone is prompt in keeping his appointments. It's 9 o'clock exactly.
Shall I call him over, my lord?
No, let him wait a little. I'd like to be quite certain that he's unaccompanied.
Would you like to have me wait for you, sir?
Well, I'm not sure how long I'm going to be here.
You'll find it hard to get a cab in this neighborhood at this time of night.
I can understand that.
I've got a lot of time.
Friend, you could die of old age, and I sure could run out of money while you were waiting for me. Thanks just the same. Hello? Anybody here?
Briggs.
Yes, sir.
Boone's here.
You think I'm deaf? I could hear him calling if I was halfway out to sea.
I may overlook your impertinence if you happen to remember your instructions.
We close in when you call, Governor. And we don't kill him till we find out if he's got the bakers.
You have a remarkable memory, Briggs. Remarkable.
We'll give him another quarter of an hour. By that time, Tyler should have Mrs. Boone in custody, in case we need her.
But Boone may leave by then.
Look for yourself, Mr. Stone. Boone is a very loyal man, and loyal men are extremely apt to be patient. I think we can be confident that he'll remain a while. If he starts to leave, we'll simply call him in.
Yes? Who is it?
It's Mr. Tyler, Mrs. Boone. I'd hoped that you'd remember me as a traveling companion.
I remember you quite well for your courtesy. But why are you calling at this hour of the night?
I offer my abject apologies, but I have a message from your husband. May I come in?
Just a moment, Mr. Tyler. You may come in now, Mr. Tyler.
I apologize again for the intrusion, but the communication seemed most important.
I'm sure that it must be.
I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad tidings, but Mr. Boone is hurt. He's asking for you.
Dan's hurt?
Yes, ma'am.
How did it happen?
An accident, Mrs. Boone. A runaway carriage. He's at the doctor's office now, so if you'll come with me.
Mr. Tyler, how do you know that Mr. Boone isn't in the next room safe and sound?
But he can't be.
I don't know what you mean.
In plain words, Mr. Tyler, I think you're a liar. And I've been a very foolish woman.
I didn't realize I was so obvious.
You weren't until just now. That was my stupidity. I should have realized before why you and Mr. Stone held up the coach.
My congratulations, Mrs. Boone, on your perception.
And mine to you on your duplicity. Now, what have you done with my husband?
Nothing yet. He'll be quite safe if he sees fit to cooperate.
I assure you he won't. He's not a traitor.
I assure you we've considered that. That's why I'm afraid you'll have to come along with me.
Come along with you.
It's possible that Boone might risk his own life, but we're quite sure that he won't risk yours.
Who's we?
What difference does it make? Get your coat, Mrs. Boone, and come quietly, and I'll assure you that you won't be harmed.
And I'll assure you, Mr. Tyler, if you take one more step, you'll be harmed very much indeed.
Are you trying to frighten me, Mrs. Boone?
No, Mr. Tyler. I'm just trying to save you from what might possibly be a great deal of pain.
You're bluffing.
You'll never know unless you take one more step.
Then I think I'll call your bluff.
Don't do it, Mr. Tyler. I'm warning you. Would you mind calling the police?
Madam, I can understand you being upset. I imagine the report you heard a moment ago may have sounded like gunfire.
It was gunfire. I shot a man. Now, would you please call the police?
Mrs. Holt.
And I prefer to be called by my right name, Mrs. Boone, Mrs. Daniel Boone. And the man's not badly hurt, but I do suggest you get a doctor.
Excuse me, madame. Did I hear you say you are Mrs. Daniel Boone?
That's right.
Allow me to introduce myself. I'm the Marquis de Lafayette. I'm the one the dispatch your husband carries is intended for.
Well, then perhaps you can help me find him. I think he's in great danger.
I'm at your disposal, madame. Also my carriage and my escort. Do you have any idea where Mr. Boone might be?
He left earlier in the evening to meet some man at Pier 13.
13? Then I suggest we waste no time in getting there.
Yes, I think we might call him in now. It's quite apparent that he came alone.
Mr. Boone! Mr. Boone! This way! This way, Mr. Boone! This way, Mr. Boone!
I'm sorry to have kept you waiting, sir, but in affairs of this kind, the utmost secrecy is necessary. I had to assure myself that you were not being followed. You are Mr. Daniel Boone, are you not?
I'm Daniel Boone. Who are you?
Under the circumstances, I prefer to remain anonymous.
Well, under the circumstances, there's not much chance of our coming to an agreement.
I assume that you're carrying the dispatch with you?
Dispatch?
Oh, come now, Mr. Boone. You're being difficult.
Well, I'm not being difficult. I'm just trying to make sure I'm dealing with a man I'm supposed to deal with.
If I were not the proper person, how would I know that you are registered at the Hotel Imperial as Nathan Holt?
Well, thanks to my wife, half the folks in New Orleans know that.
All right, then. If it will be of any help to you, I'll quote you the text of the dispatch you're carrying.
Well, that wouldn't be much help either. I've never read it.
Then what can I do to convince you?
You've already convinced me, because you haven't said the right words yet.
The right words? What are the right words, Mr. Boone?
Well, if you were the man I'm supposed to deal with, you'd have already said them. So I just have to figure you might be one of the men who killed Captain Grant.
Mr. Boone, I am not a murderer.
And maybe you're the man who hires them, which to my way of thinking is a little worse.
One moment, sir. I am a man who dislikes violence. But since you seem determined to be unreasonable...
Well, I'm sort of opposed to violence myself. And I've been known at times to get mixed up in it. So why don't you stop talking before I lose my temper?
You haven't heard me out yet.
I've heard all I want to hear.
I doubt that very much, Mr. Boone. You see, I'd heard that you were a patriotic and courageous man. We anticipated that you might prove a little difficult, so we've taken our precautions.
Such as?
We're holding your wife as a hostage. In principle, I dislike such things, but at times they become necessary.
Well, how long have you been holding her?
Oh, we arranged to have her taken in shortly after you left the hotel.
It sounds very interesting.
Yes, I fancied it might give you pause for thought.
How many men did you send to get her?
What difference does that make?
If you sent only one, I feel sorry for him. Because when I left, she had a gun, and she's as good a shot as I am.
All right, Mr. Stone. Call in your men.
I think it would be better if you wait here, Mrs. Boone.
No.
I assure you, we will see to your husband's safety. All right, man.
There isn't a single paper on him, my lord.
I suppose it was too much to expect that he'd be carrying them.
What do you want done with him, my lord? Shall we toss him overboard?
No. Not until we find out about Mrs.
I can tell you that, Lord Brisbane. Place these men under military arrest. Are you all right, sir?
Well, I felt better in my time, but wherever you are, I'm sure glad you got here.
So am I. I'm the Marquis de Lafayette. And you are Mr. Daniel Boone of Boonesboro, Owsley County, Kentucky.
Those are probably the nicest words I've heard in days.
I presume you're not carrying the dispatch with you.
No. When we get to my wife, we'll be in business.
It's quite simple, Mr. Boone. She's the one who directed me here. She's waiting at my carriage.
Well, I told her to stay in the room.
Dan.
think this is what you've been looking for.
How long have I been carrying that?
Not long. Not long at all. You've always been real good at taking care of things. If you'll excuse us, Marquis, for some time we've been trying to have a honeymoon.
Please, be my guest. Please accept my apologies for my interruption of the dance, but I thought you might be interested in the contents of the dispatch your husband was carrying. This is your country, Mr. Boone.
From the Atlantic to the Mississippi. That's a lot of territory.
Yes, Mr. Boone, I agree with you. A great deal of territory. But wait.
The Atlantic to the Pacific.
This would make England's claim on Oregon secure, and you would always be dependent on her. This is the Louisiana the United States is purchasing. And this is what you will become the moment I put your president dispatch in the hands of Napoleon.
That was in the letter I was carrying?
Mm-hmm. That was the letter.
It's no wonder they wanted to stop it.
That's why your dispatch could not be sent the usual way. There are British warships off your coast, stopping every ship in hope of seizing it.
But it still has to go by sea.
From this port, on a French man of war. Your country should be very grateful to you, Mr. Boone. I can assure you, my country is. And now, if you will excuse me, I must say good night.
Well, at least we know why we're guests of honor at the governor's ball. Madam, may I have the pleasure of this dance?
Sir, I am extremely flattered.
Shall we join the others?
Daniel Boone was a man, yes, a big man, with an eye like an eagle and as tall as a mountain was he. Daniel Boone was a man, yes, a big man. He was brave, he was fearless, and as tough as a mighty oak tree. From the coonskin cap on the top of old Dan to the heel of his rawhide shoe, the rippenest, roaringest, fightingest man the frontier ever knew. Daniel Boone was a man, yes, a big man, with an eye like an eagle and as tall as a mountain was he. Daniel Boone was a man, yes, a big